So we're going to get things started. I want to thank everybody coming tonight.
Being recorded.
It's Tuesday, February 9th, and we're in the Robert Kroll boardroom. So thanks for attending. I'm going to call this meeting to order. And the first item on the agenda is going to be adoption of the agenda. Does anybody want to make a motion to adopt the agenda?
I'll make a motion, we accept the agenda as submitted.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any board discussion? Seeing none, do we have any public comment on the agenda?
Seeing no public comment online?
Thank you. Nothing in person, nothing online, anything via
No
email?
public comment.
Okay,
Cassiopo?
seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. And for those on the board, what I've noticed is if you push the button, kind of hold it down for a second or two, and then it comes on a little easier. Item 2 is the flag salute, so please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item 3 is the superintendent's report. This is for information only. Superintendent Stokes.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board, guests. It's nice to be with you this evening. It's my pleasure to introduce Ann Britt, who is our director of the student leadership group at Carson High School, and we are delighted to not only have Miss Britt, but also to have some students. Students, you have the, I guess it's the honor to be here with us tonight, and really the first ones. We are able to see Miss Wiggins regularly, and we appreciate her efforts, but we're really happy to see you tonight and congratulate you on a tough school year. And we're looking forward to hearing the report tonight. So thanks for being here.
Thank you, Mr. Stokes. I appreciate the invitation of coming here and seeing you guys. It's very refreshing. And we just got done with our Winter Fest for 2021. Our activities were quite different from usual, but we were able to do some things. We had lunchtime activities. We played bingo and Kahoot, things that they could do socially distanced. And then we also teamed up with Mrs. Golick and her FBLA, and they did a virtual talent show, which was very successful. And then we did our crowning on Friday night. We were able to get a handful of the students, these guys, and their parents to come and be able to witness that in a socially distanced manner. So that was fabulous. So I'd like to introduce some of the winners. We weren't able to have everybody here tonight, but I had a few come, so that's fantastic. So Reese, come on up. You'll just introduce yourself, and then what position that you got, and then a little bit about what you do at Carson High.
Okay. I'm Reese McKenzie. I won for juniors for the Winter Fest, and I play soccer and basketball at Carson High.
I have Trevor Britt here.
Hello, my name is Trevor Britt, and I am the Winterfest sophomore prince, and I run track and play football.
He's mine. That's mine. I have Serena Dancer.
Hey, I won the senior Winterfest court with William. He's right there. I'm
sorry, they recorded us and it's hard to hear.
I am part of clubs like Blue Crew and NHS, and I'm also in FBLA. I was the MC with Abby. We actually won the honorable mention category. We were the only ones in that category. So.
And last but not least, I have Will Breeding.
I'm Will Breeding. I play tennis. I'm playing tennis in this upcoming season at the high school. I won the Senior King of Winterfest. I'm glad we got to participate in some semblance of the festivities this year, COVID permitting.
Once again, I want to thank you guys for having us, and we're looking forward to trying to do a few more things before the school year's out.
Oh, thank you, Ann. I appreciate it. We appreciate all of you. Congratulations. It's always nice being around royalty, so kind of raises our place in the community. But no, really, congratulations. It is an honor, and I hope you enjoy it. And I know things are different this school year. And like you, we want to see things get back to some resemblance of normal soon. But I'm glad we were able to do this and that you were able to participate. So thank you very much. And again, congratulations.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. We appreciate it and wish you the best as the school year carries forward. And we're hopeful that there can be more activities. It truly is missed by all of us. We enjoy seeing the things that you do and appreciate your efforts. So best wishes.
Turn my mic on. Also, just for your guys' information, Will Breeding is usually a really outstanding basketball player. And so he's a senior this year, missing his season. So anyway, thanks for having a good time in Winterfest, Will.
Any other comments on the board? All right, well, thank you, everybody. Again, thanks for taking your time out of your evening as well. We really enjoy seeing everybody.
Mr. President, members of the board, I have just one other item. I want to announce not only to the trustees, but also to staff and to the community that Friday, February the 12th, that's this Friday, is a school day. And let me just try to clarify that a little bit. Approximately a year ago, when the original academic calendar was approved, we were having a typical school, well, we had planned to have a typical school year this year. And as part of that, we had included February the 12th as part of the holiday weekend. And when COVID hit and the classes were changed and the calendar was changed, that 4-day weekend went away. So we still have the regular bank holiday, as it were, for President's Day, and that's this coming Monday. But February the 12th is no longer a holiday. So if we have staff or families that might be working off of a really old and unrevised calendar, just wanted to make sure that you knew that we have school this Friday. So, Mr. President, that is my report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Superintendent Stokes. We're going to go to board reports. Do we have Carson High School here? Carrying the weight of the whole high school.
A little bit, but that's okay. All good?
I think
Perfect. So,
Yeah, and you can bend that to make that easier to, there you go.
perfect. So I'm Sarah Wiggins, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about what's going on at Carson High. So as Miss Britt said, we kind of had Winterfest last week, and I just want to say that everything went really well considering that we actually had something to do, and I really enjoyed it, even though it's better than nothing, and I'm really happy to say that. And then the only thing that we are pretty much going to move forward with is spring committees, and we are going to start planning those next week, I believe, in leadership. Thank you.
Good, thank you very much. And do we have anybody representing Pioneer tonight? Yeah, I did not. Tonight I only received, and I'll make that announcement, but I just have one. But we'll move on to the board. Mike, why don't you lead us off?
Good evening. So Mark Twain is in the middle of their Have a Heart for Our Community fundraiser, and they are raising funds to help our frontline healthcare workers. And if you'd like to join their efforts, please join their Facebook page, or you could contact Mark Twain Elementary School, and I'm sure they could get you set up. And then I also just wanted to say that Mrs. Clario has been sharing some very cool ideas that they're going to be using for their week of coding. So she sent me a cool template for kindergarten week of coding, which if any of you have ever been in a kindergarten classroom, that is probably going to be an adventure. So go Mark Twain. And then I just think listening to Sarah, considering back when, I think when we were all seniors, we complained about everything. And the fact that they're just thankful to have something kind of makes me feel guilty for the things we complained about as seniors in high school. So it's a whole different reality for you guys.
Thank you, Stacy.
I had the pleasure of sitting through a forum with Amanda Campbell and Pat Quinn Davis, and they're doing a really cool project at Carson High right now. They're digitizing all the old yearbooks and newspapers. They got a $5,000 scholarship from the Rotary, so they're going to have it all on disc and really well preserved. So they are looking for donations. So if anybody wants to donate, you just have to take it to the high school and say it's for the library. But it sounds like a really cool project. The other thing is we actually do have some sports. We have state skiing today and tomorrow. So it's not much, but it's what we're grabbing onto. And up here in the north, we have skiing. Down south, they have the flag football. So we're pretty excited about seeing how all that works out. And that's all I have. And then for Pacific Region, we just have our introduction orientation for members the last Friday of the month. And you'll be seeing more information about that.
Great. Thank you, Stacy. Don.
Dr. Conley, principal at Eagle Valley Middle School, has a couple of announcements. MAP testing is being completed this week. We encourage and hope that all students can attend consistently this week. And then Thursday and Friday this week are the Avid College and Career Dress-Up Days. Students can wear school-appropriate non-SSA, including hoodies, that have colleges or career logos on them. We want to encourage students to think about the many future college and career opportunities and to start thinking about the future now. And that's all I got.
Great. Thank you. Lupe.
I don't have any report from my schools, but I do want to give a big shout out to the high school teachers from the English department. They are reaching out to the outreach team from WNC to help the students in preparing to apply for college and financial aid. So I really want to thank them for all they're doing for their students, not only to help them finish up their year strong, but also getting them ahead in their college endeavors. So thank you to them and to the principal for his leadership.
Great. Thank you. Laurel.
There it went. Okay. For Fritch Elementary School, they would like to thank the Carson City Schools Foundation for the grant that they awarded to Fritch, and they're going to use that grant to promote student progress in math. And for Fremont Elementary School, they have a PTA meeting tomorrow morning via Zoom, and the information is in the Parent Square app, so parents can look that up. And for NASB, if you haven't yet heard, which I think Renee got it out to us all, the conference that we had planned at the end of March to be socially distanced was not able to accommodate us in a way that would have allowed everyone to participate in a socially distanced manner. Half would be at one ballroom and half would be in another ballroom watching it live streamed, which defeats the purpose of being in person. So that event has been canceled, and there will be training provided virtually, probably that same weekend, but possibly not for the whole 2 days. It might be just a 1 day or a day and a half. So we will get you the information as soon as we get that figured out.
Thank you. And just a reminder, while Rich is getting his mic, it's up, just keep in mind our continuing education requirement is trustees. So, this is a good opportunity for us to get the units we need. And so I just wanted to remind everybody of that. Sorry, Rich, go ahead.
Oh, no problem. At Carson Middle School, their students recently completed the spring MAP assessment. And they'd like to thank the kids for putting the best foot forward to show what they know for MAP tests. And they are also excited to see that the majority of students have continued to show progress or growth on the MAP assessments this school year. So that's really great. And then they'd like to congratulate Mrs., I hope I don't mess up this name, but Adilot and Mrs. Picars on being selected as recipients of the Carson City School Foundation mini grants at Carson Middle School. Mrs. Adilot will be implementing a math tutoring program, and Mrs. Picars will be creating a weekly reading incentive program for students. And they'd also like to thank the school foundation for their support and the grants. Then at Boardwick Bray, access testing has begun for the EL students and will go through the month of February. Students are encouraged to get plenty of sleep and eat a healthy breakfast in the morning so they can be prepared to do the best on the assessment. Then Wednesday, February 10th, is Boardwick's virtual stream night from 6 to 7 p.m. They hope that the families will participate in the exciting event, and they'd like to thank all the members who have put this event together. It was a lot of work. And then they would just also like to remind people that Monday, February 15th is President's Day, and no school on that day. And also, you already mentioned it, but on the 12th, the school is in session on the 12th. And that's my report.
Great, thank you, Richard. For me, just a couple quick updates at Pioneer High School. First, I just wanted to let everybody know I had a chance to go to Pioneer High School and visit with Principal Zona last week and got a nice tour of their campus, got to see some of the classrooms in action. They, like everybody else, are dealing with social distancing, and so they showed us how they're doing that. And what they're doing is in the classes where they say they could only fit 12 students and the class may have 16, they have supervised overflow classrooms set up where some of the students will be in there, and then they cycle through the class, so every student gets a chance to be in the main class, if you will, and you don't have the same students sitting in the overflow. And it's working pretty well, like everywhere else in the rest of us. You have your, you have your computer malfunctions and whatnot, but it was really working pretty smooth. So my hat's off to everybody over there. It was a nice tour, and the teachers and students I had a chance to speak to were welcoming, so I just wanted to thank them for that. One announcement from Pioneer is just sending out a congratulations to student David Kimball. David's one of their Pioneer WNC Jumpstart students, and he's obtaining, in fact, he just took his test for his welding certification, and he's looking to pursue a career in welding, either through the military or in the mining industry. So he was very appreciative for the opportunity to be a part of Jumpstart, and he reached out. I believe he was in Carson Now. They did a little article on him. I think it was Carson Now. But he wanted to express his thanks to the teachers at Pioneer and the professors at WNC who said they were instrumental in helping him achieve his goals. So congratulations to David, and I wish him the best in his future career pursuits. Real quick, there's a Carson City School District Foundations meeting Thursday at 11:30 that I'll be attending. The foundation's doing some great work, and I appreciate being involved with them. And I just wanted to send a quick thanks out to students, parents, and all our staff throughout the district. Again, we've done it before, just thanking everybody for their cooperation through the COVID pandemic and all the things we're trying to do. I know at times you want to pull your hair out, and it gets a little frustrating trying to balance everything, and for us parents, learning how to do things online. But everybody seems to be working pretty well together, and I just wanted to thank the students, and the parents and all the staff at all our schools for really a job well done. This is not an easy year or so to contend with. So thank you, and that completes my report. Next, we're going to move on to association reports, and that's for discussion only. Do we have any association reports? Anybody chiming in?
I have no association reports, Mr. Cassiopo.
Okay. None? Okay, not seeing any. We will move on to public comment. I know we're going to have some public comment tonight, so I just wanted to go through this in a little more detail than I might normally do. But public comments will be accepted through telephonic participation or through virtual participation via email. The email address is publiccomment@carson.k12.nv.us. Comments may be made by members of the public on any matter within the authority of this board. We ask folks to note that public comment will be taken on items marked for possible action before action is taken on such items, and members of the public are encouraged to comment on such items at the time they're being considered. Although members of the board may respond to questions and discuss issues raised during public comment, no action by the board may be taken on such a matter until the matter is placed on an agenda for action at a meeting of the board. In making public comments, speakers are asked to, in this case, they're not coming to the table, but to register in or contact us, speak clearly, and identify themselves for the record. Speakers are asked to limit their comments to no more than 3 minutes and not to simply repeat comments made by others. Because we never know, it's hard to tell how many people we have for public comment. I just wanted to make the point that the 3-minute time restriction isn't because we don't want to hear from folks. We just don't know how many people we have, and I want to give everybody a chance to say what they have to say so we can hear everybody. If for some reason you have more to say than we can allow in that time frame, we do ask that you submit your comments to the school district so we can get that entered into the public record, because everybody's comments are important and we do want to hear them. So with that, do we have any public comment?
Yes, we do, President Casiopo. Jeez, you are unmuted. Please state your name for the record.
Hey, my name is JD, and I'm just curious as to what your plan is in light of Wallace, the teacher Wallace who made those racist comments to that indigenous young lady. If y'all don't do anything about it, are you going to be concerned that your own community is going to see you in that same light as being a racist? And do you take into consideration, I heard you say that, but say every comment here is in support of this young lady and not in support of this racist teacher? Are you going to then vote to fire this Wallace guy? And because pretty much we're not going to settle for anything less than this guy being fired. And I just wanted to know if you're going to be concerned about also being painted as a racist, the same way that this teacher is being painted for making racist comments, and then you would be actually enabling his racism. So on this illegally occupied land, that's my question to you. And morally, how will you be dealing with all that? AIM Northern Nevada. Por vida. That's it.
Oh, thank you, JD. We appreciate your comments. Again,
We'll see how much you appreciate them.
I'll tell you how much I appreciate it. In fact, I just did.
Yeah, let's see.
So what I'd like to tell you is we are taking this serious. We're working, the trustees are working with the school district. There's been action taken, and we're going to continue to work with the school district, because what we don't want is any student to ever feel like they're being misrepresented or they're in an unsafe environment. We take any accusations of racism seriously, and I just want you to know that, me personally, I'm going to continue to follow up with the superintendent in accordance with what we're allowed to do as trustees, and make sure we continually work to make sure our students are being represented and treated fairly. Next comment, please.
Matthew Wilkie, you are unmuted. Please state your name for the record.
Hi, yes, my name is Matthew Wilkie, member of Power and Liberation here in Carson City. I stand here with members of the team in complete solidarity of the racist teacher, Brian Wallace, out at Eagle Valley Middle School. This investigation is a complete sham. There was no intent of having a complete investigation whatsoever, completed by the fact that the student nor the teachers or the student's family was involved with this so-called investigation. You cannot have an investigation when the person involved is not even involved with said investigation. There should be an independent investigation. When you're being investigated by your friends, it is an impartial investigation. So there needs to be a proper investigation and quit sweeping this under the rug. This will not stop. You can lock us outside your doors. We will be here every single time.
Great, thank you very much. Did we get the name? I didn't catch the name.
Matthew Wilkie.
Thank
My
you.
name is Matthew.
Okay, next comment, please.
Our next comment is from R. Suktoma.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
My name is Richard Siyaktama, and I am Shoshone Paiute, Northern Nevada. My family, my children are of the Washoe tribe here in Carson City. I also represent the American Indian movement of Northern Nevada. I am here tonight to speak on the ongoing investigation of your teacher, Mr. Wallace. I have a lot of questions, so please just bear with me. Let me speak for a moment on Mr. Wallace's comments to Ms. Shoshone. Who gives authority to a teacher to say hurtful words like that to a child? His actions and thoughts that day is perceived as individual racism directed through verbal intimidation as a non-native to a native child. Mr. Wallace abused his power as a teacher through his thoughts and actions. It was cruel and implicit. Is Mr. Wallace naive to think that Ms. Shoshone doesn't understand what racism, prejudice, and discrimination is? Was she supposed to be a good Indian in his class being humiliated in front of her peers? Does he know or not care to empathize with Ms. Shoshone's family's history and tribal history? Where was his sincere empathy, compassion, and apology that very day? All the family received was a letter. And how many Native children were in that class? And how many does it take to be offended by hateful remarks? One. Because when I was her age, going to school in Washington County, I was harassed by a teacher also. I was told I was a communist and handcuffed in front of my peers because I refused to stand for the American flag. No one stood up for my rights. That's why we're here. Despite race and color, we all know as adults there are choices and consequences.
The host would like you to unmute
Mr.
your
Wallace is
microphone.
responsible
You
for
can
his
press
choice
star
of words
6
that day.
to unmute.
We entrust our children to your education.
You are unmuted.
Is it perfect? No. However, protecting Mr. Wallace by deviating from policies and procedures in his favor is institutional prejudice and discrimination. Accountability must go full circle. There is no gray area here. There is only right and wrong. The way the case is being handled is not equally just to Ms. Shoshone and her family. There is nothing in place to prevent this from happening again. And we are demanding an unbiased third-party review of the case. In closing, we as tribal people have no choice but to become strong and resilient through time against racism, prejudice, and discrimination. We are more than survivors of oppression. You can't see all of us out here, but we look beautiful. Our children are our most precious gifts on our Mother Earth, and we will protect them with our lives. The American Indian movement will not back down, will not tolerate racism, prejudice, or discrimination against the indigenous people here on our ancestral homeland. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you very much. We do appreciate your comment. Next comment, please.
Our next comment is from Melissa Mendoza. Melissa, you are unmuted. Please state your name for the record.
Melissa, are you there? We can't hear you.
I'm here. Sorry, I am unmuted now. My name is Melissa Mendoza, and I'm here speaking on behalf of AM Foothills Central California, and I address my statement to all members of the school board who are present. I'm here representing AM Foothills Central California. We are here tonight in regards to the investigation results submitted in January to the incident that occurred in November. We find the investigation both lacking in merit and unsubstantial to any findings that indicate a full and fair investigation ever took place. We respectfully request that this teacher is placed back on administrative leave, unpaid, and an independent third-party investigation is conducted into this incident and into this teacher's record of conduct. Clearly, this board could not make unbiased decisions on behalf of the students of whose education they have been entrusted with. This sort of decision-making is far-reaching and demonstrates callous disregard for the future of our country's leaders and continues a sort of systemic dysfunction that must end today. This is not the first incident that has happened, and I do not believe it to be the last. When teachers are not capable of learning, they have lost the ability to teach. Where was the teachable moment in this? We do not see any sincerity in the decisions by the school, the teacher, nor the board when the investigation was completed. So this demonstrates clear disregard for learning, only a need for control of power. History teachers have a responsibility to history as a whole subject, not a biased opinion, and for far too long our community has been selectively taught what our educational system has deemed appropriate regardless of fact. When that happens, when selection removes facts, is when fallacy becomes truth and distortion becomes the mirror that society reflects. It is time to look into the mirror and decide that we no longer accept this image and fix it. We are more than the distorted truth that we are told we are. So I challenge you to look into the mirror and decide how distorted you see the future, as what you want to leave behind is your legacy today, because that is your choice. How you decide to resolve the distortion is your legacy. So please choose wisely.
Thank you very much. Next public comment, please.
Seeing no other public comment online?
Okay. Renee, do we have any public comments via email? Oh, I'm sorry, we have one more? And then, okay.
Ray, you are unmuted. Please state your name for the record.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Teresa Kiwusiaya. Chami Hui Ito Boapoaxiaya. My name is Ray Bacasiga Valdez. I'm the director of the American Indian Movement, Northern Nevada. We come tonight in a prayerful way, peaceful way. We put a prayer out here tonight. Chami Hui Boapoak. Blessings to your families, your loved ones. We stand tonight and we ask the board to step forward in this process with Jarina Shoshone. We're not satisfied with the investigation process, which actually shifted to a teacher review within Eagle Valley Middle School. We're asking the board to step forward and protect our children, all children, your children, our children, that we have a safe environment, safe learning environment. We're disappointed in this process, but we're patient, peaceful people, prayerful people. We know that the Nevada Education Association will pretty much follow the results from Eagle Valley Middle School. We know the Carson County School District will pretty much follow the investigation/teacher review of Brian Wallace. So we're going to turn to and ask for an independent investigation on Eagle Valley Middle School, on the Carson County School District, and on Brian Wallace. I ask you, Mr. Walker, to step forward and protect our children, to protect this community. We have members that go to your district. We should not be treated as less than human. The transparency does not exist. There is no autonomy at this point. But we will sit with you at the table. But we need to know the pieces, to keep it transparent, to say that this is how it is, no one was hurt, but one student. As a teacher, 23 years in Washoe County School District, we look to help one child, and then another, and then another. And Jarina matters. So I ask you to take this seriously, our request. We're going to keep pursuing. We're not satisfied. The family's not satisfied. Nova's not satisfied. We thank you for your time. It's beautiful out here tonight. You ought to come out and stand with us. Y'all have a good night.
Thank you very much.
Chami.
Appreciate your comments. Any additional public comment?
Our next comment is from Isabella Jacobs. You are unmuted. Please state your name for the record.
My name is Isabella Jacobs for the record. I'm with AIM Northern Nevada, and we come out here out of love and respect for all people. Along with the issues with the investigation that took place on Brian Wallace's behalf, we also asked for the board to take an honest look at the climate of these classrooms and the racism that is spread throughout the entire educational institution. We ask that history be taught truthfully and honestly. For a teacher in a history classroom to make a comment, a blasé comment about the genocide of another people's culture is entirely inappropriate, but it reflects the mentality of these teachers in these schools and the institution itself. So we ask that the curriculum be reflected upon, and so that that history not be taught through a white lens, and that the teachers themselves look at their own white lens and they can drop the security and biases that is inherent in the institution, so that we can create a thriving environment for all people. We ask that the curriculum change and that First Nations voice be included. This is a history class here. We ask for there to be land acknowledgements in our history classes. This issue wouldn't have arose if our First Nations people were honored and respected in the classroom and in the curriculum. So we ask that the curriculum be changed and that the investigation do better. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Our next comment is from Joanna M. You are unmuted. Please state your name for the record.
We can't hear you. You might be muted on your end. Oh, Joanna, are you there?
Hearing no response from Joanna.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you now.
Oh, okay. Hanukima. I go shoot nui numu. Ikima. Go shoot nui numu washo. Guy Dakota. Kui Dakota. Kamu Dakota. Puzi Dakota. Tabusi Dakota. I na. Ina hungalelti pawalu welmelti. Ata guadada wanau. Iwabatu. It's the three bands of the Washoe tribe and the Paiute bands of the Great Basin Indians, that language I'm speaking. To introduce myself to you, Inani and Johanna, Iwabatu, Atagwadaru Guna'a. And I humbly and respectfully ask you to please consider systemic racism does exist in this country, especially in the state of Nevada. And if you're going to be a person educating our students, then you should know the education of the Great Basin and the people of this basin, such as Chief Truckee, Chief Winnemucca. And remember that we are the descendants here. We still live and we are still here, and we're not going anywhere. Our ancestors are buried in the ground here in Genoa, in Carson Valley, in Mount Diablo Meridian, in the mountains where we were when the 60-year wars began with the Paiutes. And the Paiutes did stand up for the original first kidnappings when the settlers, colonizers came to this country. The first people they saw were Mormons. And it wasn't very pleasant. According to the story told by non-Indians who translated for the Paiute and Washoe, Truckee was pleased and wanted his non-Indian settlers to come and bring their intelligence and bring their technology. But look at where we are today, 20 years later. We're still facing racism. Nothing has changed from day one. We're still being kidnapped. We still come up missing and murdered. And it's because we're matriarchal. We're the women of this country. We're still here. We're still alive. Because we come from this turtle island. It's our mother's land. And every time you attempt to harm us or our children, you're harming our Mother Earth. We just ask you to respect us as First Nations people, Indigenous. We were here first. We've always been here first. The oldest person they found in this country is Paiute.
Joanna, I sincerely apologize, but we've just exceeded 3 minutes. But I would ask if you have any additional comments, please forward those to the district so we can get that on record. And I appreciate the time you took. Do we have any additional comments?
Seeing no additional comments online at this time.
Okay, I'm going to look to Renee to see if we have any comments via email.
Trustee Cassioppo, I received an email from a Marge Grow Eppard. There's no comment, name only.
Okay. Thank you very much. If anybody did not get a chance to, again, participate in public comment, we ask that you do contact the district office and get your comments registered so we can get it into the public record. So at this time, seeing no more public comments, I'm going to close public comment and we're going to move on to agenda item 7. And again, thank you, everybody. We do appreciate hearing from you. Item 7 is presentation on school social worker mental health services and intervention during the COVID-19 pandemic. This item's for discussion only, and we have Dave Calario. Do we have Dave available remote?
Good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you. Good evening, Mr. President Cassioppo and Mr. Vice President Varner and the rest of the Carson City School District Board of Trustees. It's a pleasure to speak with you again tonight, and I thank you for the opportunity. As you know, as we all know, that during this academic, not only in our school district and state, but nationwide, our children, our students have been suffering academically. They've been suffering socially, emotionally, and with mental health needs. But our social workers are hard at work, both virtually and in person, serving the students and the families when they can. What I've done is so you wouldn't have to hear me do this, I thought it might be more appropriate if you heard directly from our school social workers. So I have invited 3, one from each level, and to essentially speak no more than 5 minutes. I will introduce each one prior to speaking. And then if the board had any questions or comments of them, that would be more than welcomed. And then at the end, with all 3 speaking, we could provide that opportunity again. But essentially, they will speak on the healthy challenges. And I put healthy in parentheses. The glass is half full, not half empty here. The healthy challenges that they have faced serving students and families during the pandemic. And also maybe to give 1 or 2 examples of success stories that they've had with their students and or families during the pandemic. So the first person that I'm going to introduce, and hopefully they'll all be unmuted as well, is Camilla Yorst from Empire. Camilla, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Awesome. Camilla has her MSW or Master's of Social Work degree. She is also a licensed clinical social worker, one of 3 licensed clinical social workers we have in our school district. And one of the distinctions of a licensed clinical social worker versus a licensed social worker is an LCSW, as we call them, by their license can diagnose and treat mental illness, much like a clinical psychologist and a marriage and family therapist. Camilla has been at Empire Elementary for approximately 1 year. So Camilla, thank you so much for taking the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Dave, and thank you for having me. It's lovely to be able to speak with all of you about some of the interventions and health services that we're providing to our kids during the COVID-19 pandemic. And so, as Dave said, I'll kind of start with some of the healthy challenges that we've encountered as a result of the pandemic. I would say probably the biggest thing that I have seen at the elementary level, I'm at Empire Elementary School, is that our case management has, been more needed than ever before. And really that just means meeting the basic needs of kids and families. So food, shelter, clothing, that kind of thing has been in high need during this time for, obviously for multiple reasons. In order to address that, we've been partnering with various community resources, such as, Ron Wood Family Resource Center, FISH, the Northern Nevada Dream Center. So really, I've been in contact with them pretty frequently for many, many different families at Empire, just to make sure that, we're meeting those foundational needs of the kids and families during this time of uncertainty. So I think, that's one of the biggest things that comes to mind is just the case management piece has been a lot more needed than it has in years past. In addition to that, I am certainly seeing an uptick in anxiety-based behaviors at school. Lots of school avoidance, kids are really wanting to stay home with their families. They're wanting to be physically with their families, for the most part, caregivers, parents, guardians, that kind of thing. As I'm sure we're all aware, there have been pretty significant attendance issues, I think as a result of that school avoidance, but also just as a result of the families really struggling to make ends meet during this time. In addition to that, with the anxiety-based behaviors, I'm seeing a lot of difficulty focusing for kids. I think that a lot of the time they're sort of in survival mode right now. They're thinking about other things. Are my parents safe? Are my family safe? Will my grandpa be okay? That kind of thing. I'm seeing a lot of anxieties about home, family, safety, health, that kind of thing. So I would say those two things, the case management piece as well as the anxiety-based behaviors, are sort of the two biggest challenges or things that I've seen so far this year. Sort of a bright spot is that at least in elementary, all the kids are back for the most part full-time. We do have a very small subset of kids that are still remote, but for the most part, the kids are back, and I'm really seeing a huge difference in overall happiness, but also in mental health with the schedule being back to normal somewhat. I think that's largely in part to, kids having a more predictable routine. Things are more structured. They just know, we're at school 5 days a week, only physically 4, obviously, but I think just being in that routine and having that structure has been hugely helpful. So I do really truly feel like that's a bright spot, and I'm hoping that, we're moving towards that for some of the other schools as well. Another really bright piece, and I sort of mentioned this earlier, is that our community has really rallied around these kids and families during this incredibly difficult time, and has really done an amazing job in filling in the gaps that we're seeing, that have been brought on by COVID-19. And so I'm really impressed with the way that our community agencies have stepped up, and we've really worked together as a team to make sure that, the needs of our families are met as much as possible. That being said, there is a lot of work to do still. And of course, we're working hard to make sure that our kids are going to adjust healthily to this huge disruption, I guess, that has been COVID. So that's sort of my perspective. And again, thank you very much for having us here. I'm going to stay on the line and answer questions if anyone has any after my colleagues have presented.
Yeah, thank you. I think we do have some questions or comments. Maybe I can start off real quick by thanking you and your colleagues for what you do, not just for our district, but for this, students throughout the state and the United States. I mean, we're in a as we've discussed earlier tonight, kids need support, kids need representation, and this is a time during a pandemic when that's needed more than ever. And I can tell you from personal experience, students, some have certainly asked their parents to go back to school instead of staying remote. And I'm sure in fairness, others have asked to stay remote. But we're happy that we're able to get some of these students back into the schools 4 days a week at the elementary level. And we just appreciate the support that's there for these students, because I know the students and the families and the staff are all doing their best, and all of us need some support at times. So without getting deep into it, I want to thank you. And I want to open this up to other board members. Rich, you had some comments you wanted to make?
Yes, I was wondering, since the kids are back in school 4 days a week, if you've seen or have seen a reduction in the school avoidance issues that was going on before they came back?
Yeah, I would say so. I would definitely say, as I mentioned, I do feel like, when the kids were on a hybrid schedule, it was very difficult for them, I think, to get into the routine of school. I think there was so much school avoidance because it was truly every other day they were at school, and then some of them had 4-day weekends and, so on and so forth. And so I really think it was hard, and it felt more like a chore than ever for the kids to come to school, even for kids that had never felt that way before. So to answer your question, I so far have seen a reduction in those school avoidance behaviors as a result of coming back 4 days. Absolutely, yes.
Lupe?
I know that school, it has a large percentage of Latino families. I'm just curious how receptive the families were of receiving the support from the social workers.
I really, really work hard to make sure that I have established rapport with absolutely as many families as I possibly can. Of course, we've got many, many, many families at Empire, so it's impossible for me to have a personal relationship with all of them. But especially, during the months where we were all working from home, it was incredibly difficult to reach many, many families. I think coming back to school and coming back even hybrid was huge, because I was able to sort of identify those kids that maybe were in need of more help. And I absolutely feel like families have been incredibly receptive this entire school year to all of the supports and resources that we've made available to families through the school and also through the community. So I absolutely feel that they've been receptive to that, yes.
Thank you.
All right. I think that concludes any questions from the board. So thank you, Camilla, for your time. And who do we have next?
Thank you, Mr. President. This is Dave Calerio for the record. Maggie, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Maggie. I'll go ahead and give you a brief introduction. Maggie Portillo is a licensed social worker with her Master's of Social Work, and she works at Eagle Valley Middle School, She is the only school social worker at Eagle Valley. Maggie is also bilingual, and she has been at Eagle Valley Middle School for approximately 2 years. Maggie was recently accepted into a licensed clinical social work internship so she can get her clinical hours both at Eagle Valley Middle School as part of her job and also at West Hills Hospital during evenings and weekends. Again, we have 3 clinical social workers, 2 of whom have gone through this clinical internship. So happy to say that they're being homegrown. And Maggie, I'll turn it over to you, and thank you again for your time.
Hello. Thank you for having me. What I have seen, 2 major things that I have seen is that there has been an increase in McKinney-Vento students. today, before I left work, I called the McKinney-Vento program, and I asked what were our numbers last year in 2020 in January, how many students we had, just because I could feel that there was more. And she said that last year, January, we had 37 versus this year in January, we had 47. So we do have 10 more students identified this year than last year, which then with that, there's also more students who are getting Friday bags, using the Food for Thought program. And so those are the two things that I noticed. Another thing that I noticed because of COVID is how Camilla said, school avoidance. I've had parents call me saying my child doesn't want to go to school. Every time we get close to school, their stomach hurts. And I've had parents say that it's because either somebody the parents got really sick and the child's now traumatized, like they don't want to get COVID from the school, or they have an elder family member living with them, and so the students say things like that they have headaches or their stomach hurts or the light bothers them, that type of thing. I know that the nurse at our school has also had more students visiting her with these types of issues. A success story that I could share in regards to this is in order to keep students at school and to kind of help them out through these feelings is a couple of the students the moms reported this and wanted help with this. I meet with the students, so if they start to feel, sick or just kind of anxious about what's going on, they're always free to come down to the office and talk to me or just, just to kind of breathe in, breathe out, and hang out for a little bit until they start to feel a little bit better. I feel like that has helped a lot. As far as for the sixth graders, I know Camilla was talking about how she's noticed that it's gotten better. I will agree. I had a student who was failing across the board and wasn't even coming to school. Now that she is coming to school 4 days out of the week, she's doing a lot better. I think she's only failing 2 classes and her other classes are like D's and C's, but she was really struggling. So I feel like this is a more positive. It's more positive for them to be in the school. It seems like.
Oh, thank you.
That's all that I have.
No, thank you, Maggie. We appreciate hearing from you. Any questions for Maggie? Trustee Walker?
I more just have a comment on, I'm the president of Food for Thought, and so I just want to say any family that's viewing this and isn't sure, if your family's experiencing food insecurity or children in the community who are, if you contact either the counselor at your school, the Safe School professional, they could get you in touch with our organization, and we have a number of items that can help families with. We have weekend food bags. We also have summer food programs, and every once in a while we have other services. So reach out to your school. Sometimes I know it's tough sometimes to admit that you're in need, but right now we have a lot of people in need, and we're willing and ready to help. So just let us know.
Great, thank you. Dave, you still there?
I am. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
I knew you were. It was kind of rhetorical.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I wouldn't just decide to leave. I want to watch a ball game here. No. Maggie, thank you. And thanks for sticking around. Dave Calario for the record here. Our third and final speaker representing the high school level is Alejandra Ayala. Alejandra has her master's degree in social work. She is also a licensed social worker, and is the lead school social worker at Carson High School. Alejandra has been at Carson High for approximately 3.5 years, and she is one of the original ones with us pretty much from day one. I may have mentioned Alejandra is also bilingual. So Alejandra, thank you so much for taking the time to join us in the meeting tonight.
Hello, thank you for having me. So in agreement with Camilla and Maggie, who have talked before, the difference at the high school definitely with the hybrid schedule, it seems like, students are struggling with inconsistency and the lack of structure at home, especially on those virtual days that, they're home alone. A lot of times are home without supervision and taking on additional roles, whether that's babysitting or, doing other things for parents. Many of our students have also, have been taking on additional jobs or hours if they were previously working to help their families. This does increase, some of those struggles with the time that they dedicate for schoolwork, how much, they are attending right now, and that connectedness with teachers too, where they are only seeing their teacher once a week. And I know that has been mentioned to me from several students as to how challenging that might be, and then having to do some of the learning alone at home. I know that in difference with elementary, with what Camilla shared, our students seem to be wanting that in-person interaction with their peers, with staff, but they know it's difficult. So we've had several students that have mentioned interest in participating in group activities when we've brought it up. However, due to our social distancing and, certain limitations with space and making sure that we are following those guidelines, using Zoom to do any of that, it has definitely been a challenge in that our attendance rates for those groups or attempts for those groups have dropped. Then with Zoom, there's also, again, what else is going on around them at home? Do they have a safe space? Would they have confidential one-on-one meetings, or are they, looking out for younger siblings, having to babysit? So definitely a lot of different challenges within that. In what's going on at home. And then I would say that for the family as a whole, I've seen an increase on families that maybe haven't been on our radar before, but situation has changed, the loss of a family member, loss of a job, sole income, in guiding them. And it is hard to accept that help, especially if it is the first time that you're finding yourself in that situation. You might also not be familiar with those resources are. So working with those families to get them to a place where, we talk to them about services, we talk to them about what their options may be so that they have the support that they need. In regards to success, I agree that, working together in our school buildings with our counselors, our staff, teachers, has been very beneficial in that, yes, we might only be seeing students a limited amount of time, but that we're catching them at one point and referring them to the appropriate staff member for that additional support. And then with our community partners, really have gone above and beyond in providing some supports for our families where those gaps may be. Just to give an example really quick, had a parent who we contacted her due to the student missing a lot of school last semester on those days that she was supposed to be scheduled to attend. Came to find out she was displaying suicidal ideation. Talked to the parent, got her connected to services. However, again, due to the limitations that other services have too, the first appointment they had to wait about 3-4 weeks to get that appointment. Due to the concerns, we did contact Roto Mobile Crisis Response Team for an assessment. And other than providing that assistance with the assessment, they agreed to provide for the family a weekly check-in for that student, to provide resources where they can stabilize the student so that we weren't, those rates were increasing until she got to be connected with that resource on a more ongoing basis. So, it's just one example, but there's been several community partners that have been willing to be very flexible in making sure that we provide whatever is needed by that family, even if it's not a service that they would usually provide, just making sure that our students or families have those basic needs covered and address any safety type concerns to make sure that, again, we're meeting that in order for them to be able to also focus and be successful in school. And that would be it for me. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Alejandra. Any questions or comments, Stacy?
Thank you for all you do. Piggybacking on the last part that you talked about, have we had a rise in our suicide attempts or thoughts, or especially at the high school level? Because it seems like they're the ones that have lost the most. They don't have sports, they don't have groups, they don't have their, HOSA and all that.
Yeah, from what I've seen, I think, again, there is definitely some of that. However, I think that a lot of it, we are relying on those community partners because we're not seeing students the same amount of time, or we're having to find a different way to, contact them, whether it's via Zoom, via phone call, to make sure that we are addressing that. I see that with our students that we're on a radar for that before. They know a lot of times where to go for services and support. My concern is for those students that it's something that they're noticing an increase in, making sure that, so we're doing some monthly campaigns at the high school where we're trying to address some of those protective factors, because we want them to know, where are the resources at? Where is it that they could go and find that help or assistance, just so that we're not missing them, since it might be something that, again, has recently changed for them. But I don't know if they can talk about district-wide with our reports, but definitely at the high school, I have seen with some students where that's at. And it varies for some that had it before, they may be less stressed from not being if school was a trigger for anxiety and anything like that. So, but definitely an increase with the isolation piece and not being, for those that were really socially involved, they don't have that. There's a lot of limitations around that right now.
Yeah, hi, for the record, this is Dave Calario again. Thank you, Alejandra. Yes, I could briefly address that for you, Mrs. Wilkes McCullough. I am looking, I was pulling up as Alejandra was talking and I'm going to go by a comparison. The quarter of January, let's see, I'm looking at as we speak, October 1st to December 31st. So this is pretty recent. This would be the fourth calendar quarter. And we had 52 number of suicide screenings completed. This is throughout the district, all 10 schools. 36 of those students showed suicidal ideation, meaning they'd either thought of in the previous 2 weeks or were currently perhaps suicidal. We're required by statute to report 3 main statistical items, and that would be the number of students with suicidal ideation. The second one is the number of students who attempted suicide, physically attempted suicide. There were 5 in the fourth quarter. And then the third aspect we're required to report are the number of students who completed suicide. Unfortunately, that number was 0. So I'm going to also, I'm going to go to the same period of time last year. We had 147 suicide screenings that were completed. And let's see, I'm looking here at the, so what that tells me, with 3 times the amount over the same period of time, approximately last year, that one of the other concerns that the social workers are really trying to reach out to the kids And because a lot are virtual, that I guess it's a good news, bad news scenario that the number of suicide screenings were down considerably compared to the third quarter last year. But that was, pretty much when school was still in session full time. That was just prior to the pandemic. So I hope that kind of answers the question a little bit on that. And I continue to do this on a quarterly basis. I provide the quarterly reports to Mrs. Fusen and Mrs. Ann Sear, who's our risk manager. And then I believe they submit that to the Nevada Department of Education.
So,
Thank you. Oh, Stacy, go ahead.
sorry. So Dave, to follow that up, do you think that we're missing, I mean, because of the pandemic and the hybrid situation, do you think we're missing 100 opportunities?
It's hard to say. I think we're missing some opportunities. And again, I'll defer to our 3 social workers. I know particularly at the middle and high school level, Alejandra and Maggie work exclusively. We have a couple of community partners. If the social worker screening indicates that there could be suicidal ideation, then we refer to a community partner and they go ahead and do the clinical suicide risk assessment. And that's typically done by Carson Tahoe Behavioral Health Services. We have the state's mobile rural crisis unit. I think it could be a combination of the fact we might be missing kids because we don't know. And I'll go, say the same thing to a large degree with child abuse and neglect. With DCFS reporting that way, not having access as clearly as we did when kids were in school 100%. But Alejandra and Maggie, I don't want to speak out of turn. That's kind of what I'm seeing at the district level. I don't know what you're seeing at your particular schools.
Hi, so Alejandra here. I think that, like I mentioned before, we aren't seeing students as often, yes. However, based on a lot of times conversations that we have, they may be seeking out, to our community resources, or getting that assessment through someone else, not necessarily us. So we may record it under a student displaying suicidal ideation, but we're not counting them necessarily under us completing the screening or going through the assessment process. I think that's a little bit different, but I'm still concerned that, yes, we may be still missing some students that we're not seeing as often, or they're at home where there's more challenges in reaching them via phone, via Zoom. But I don't think it's as many as, 100 or, that we're only catching 1/3 of them. Because we are seeing that we may hear about it on the back end as to they have received these services or they were referred to this place, but we're not necessarily involved in the process.
This is Maggie here. I would say that at Eagle Valley, we probably are missing some because they're not there, or maybe they don't feel as comfortable to report, either because it normally comes from a friend or even from them. It could be because they don't feel as comfortable since they're not there as often. For example, if they were like 7th or 8th grade, and maybe the 6th graders don't know. I don't know. But I will say the ones that have came through and have been experiencing suicidal ideation, I would say that it's more severe this year. Like the thoughts are just more serious versus what I would see last year. Because last year it was just more like, oh, I was just playing, And this year, I feel like most of them have, the few that have gone to the mental health hospital. And so I just feel the severity of it is just, it's gotten a little up there. That's all.
And Camilla, you probably have probably very few cases that you've had to either do suicide screenings or work with a community partner.
Yeah, as you guys are speaking, I'm sitting here thinking about what those numbers mean and if we are missing kids and why those numbers are lower. And, I can speak for myself at Empire. I would say our suicide screenings have been more or less the same as they were last year. But I think earlier on, Alejandra, you mentioned too, something that's important to take into consideration is that there are reports of suicidal ideation following, as Alejandra said, school-based anxiety, which may be lessened for some of the kids that aren't going to school quite as much or that are having, that are hybrid, not having to come to school quite as often. There's also peer conflict, which very frequently leads to some suicidal ideation, especially in the younger kiddos. And there's not quite as much of that either, partially because of the fewer amount of kids at the school, but also just because they have less time to interact and, engage in those conflicts, I guess. So I think, this is there are many different ways to look at those lowered numbers. And I think it's just sort of a combination of everything if I had to take an educated guess.
Yeah. And if I could also Mrs. Welke McCullough, if I could just also add that I was kind of looking at that on the fly. 2019, when I said that there was 147, that actually included from day one of the school year. So that added about a month and a half. Actually, last year, the last school year, is when we started for the first time formally collecting the suicide data. We were starting it anyway, and we went a little bit above and beyond what the state requires us. Again, they require those three components that we do report. Suicidal ideation, which sometimes is a little bit, harder to show, but we use our screenings and our community partners. And again, the second one is those who attempt suicide and those who complete. So if you took a roughly, 30 to 40, 30%, 35% off that figure, it would be a little lower than 147, but still, I think the premise is that it's still more percentage-wise than what we had, what we're having or showing at the same time this last quarter. Was there any other questions or comments?
Yeah, Trustee Walker?
I was just going to say, I think one of the things we do really well in our schools is keep a close eye on our students. And having students who are not there regularly, who are only there every other day, we're not able to identify some of those signs that their parents, who aren't as trained as educators, might be missing. And I think it's just it underscores the importance of the jobs that our counselors do, that our safe school professionals do. And really, as soon as the governor starts to relax some of these restrictions, the importance of getting these kids into schools. And, kids are very isolated right now. And I think they don't have those skills. Like, we get bored, we watch Netflix. You know what I mean? I've watched more Netflix in the last 6 months than I've watched in years. But we're adults and we can rationalize it. As a child, as a young teenager, where you're just learning to have a social life and to interact with peers and healthy ways, this can be pretty detrimental. And so I think that it just really underscores the importance of what our educators do and why we have schools for these kids.
Yeah, that's a good point. Any other questions from the board?
I just have a comment. I just want to thank the social workers for their expertise in helping the children through these challenging times. And I am very pleased to see that the district is removing barriers in regards to the language, So I'm glad to hear that we have bilingual staff on board. So thank you.
Yeah, Richard.
I just have a comment for people who may be out in the audience or listening. If you're financially struggling, there's another resource that hasn't been mentioned tonight. It's the local chapter of the Red Cross. and they have resources to help with food, and sometimes they have grant funding to help with rent assistance. And they're located at the old Greater Nevada Credit Union building over by the sheriff's office. And so if anybody needs assistance, you may want to go there, and they are able to help.
Great, thank you very much. Laurel? It's fun watching everybody try to push this button.
I'm really
It's like
trying to push
it's like a
it
full
just
body
right,
effort.
and it's totally, the button doesn't like me. Just another thought I had with the kids, because I have 4 at home still, and 2 just recently we went back 4 days a week, and the other 2 that are remaining home on the hybrid where they only attend school 2 days a week. I've noticed a lot of loneliness with the siblings, so I think that may be something in this next semester when we do see the lower grades that went back through up to 6th grade, that some of those older siblings might have a change. It's a change in their routine to keep in mind too, is that now they're at home alone more possibly.
Yeah. Okay, well, Dave and Camilla, Maggie, and Alejandra, thank you very, very much. Truly appreciate your input. And again, we appreciate everything you and your colleagues do for the students. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
very
Mr.
much for having us.
Casiopo. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we are going to move on to item 8, presentation on the school counselor program in the Carson City School District. This is for discussion only, and we have Bridget Gordon and Amanda Chambers. You can come up here to we're set up here. Just make sure you push the button, it'll turn green at the base.
All right, thank you, board, for having us here tonight. My name is Bridget Gordon, and I am a counselor at Carson High School, and I'm the district PLC lead, which means that I help coordinate our professional development and lead our monthly meetings. And I have Mandy Chambers with me, who's now at Carson Middle School, and she was at Carson High School for most of her career. So the presentation I have, if you're watching from home, is available to you on your phone. It's a Google slide. So we have found as school counselors quickly that we needed to find resources where we could get information to students no matter what their technology was, right? So we utilize Google a lot. So if you're at home and you can see this presentation, it's bit.ly/CCSD school counselor update, and those capitalizations matter. But all the links then within this presentation are available to you if you have any questions or you want to know anything more about school counseling. Okay, next. Can I go forward myself?
Yeah, I think you can control it.
Okay.
I don't know if this one works. You could maybe
So,
use the down arrow.
yeah, okay, so in the district, we have school counselors only at the middle school and the high school in this district. So it was really important to me. I wanted to talk to you about the scope of our work. At Eagle Valley, we have 2 school counselors. Carson Middle has 3 school counselors. Carson High School has 7, and currently we have a school counseling intern. And then Pioneer High School has 1 school counselor. I wanted to share with you just a couple student voices. So this student, Shay, is a Carson High School senior, and he actually is talking about Mandy. He's my student now, but he wasn't. So he shares with us a little bit about why it's important to have school counselors. He's a first-generation college student. Oh. No. Oh no, Raymond.
Yeah, I might just the volume knob.
Freshman year, my teacher referred me to a school counselor because of something I wrote in class. And when I went, I remember not knowing what a counselor was, and it was very awkward for me at first. But I went, and I was wondering why she wanted me. And when I walked in, she was like, how are you? And I just knew it was about the writing, and I could feel tears welling up in my eyes, and I just started bawling. And from that point on, I felt like I had a safe place to be myself, and my counselor gave me that opportunity, and she also gave me the opportunity to feel comfortable enough to come back. And now I'm at the point where I have a 3.8 GPA, and I applied for a very selective college, and I am just waiting for my acceptance.
So he actually got the acceptance since we recorded this last week. So he got into a highly selective school as a first generation student. And, really that he credits that to his relationship with his school counselor. So last week was school counseling week. And we were grateful. Dan put out some really great media for us. We got a really great chance to highlight what school counselors do for the Carson City School District. So I want to touch base really quick since it's like so much listening. I want to touch base about the role of the school counselors. I want to talk about how we have focused on equity and access during COVID-19 specifically, and then what the future for the Carson City School District counselors are. So in the last couple of years, you've noticed probably a shift from this old word guidance counseling to school counseling. And I want to clarify why that happened. So I really love research. Is something, as you get to know me, I, in my free time, will read peer-reviewed research for fun, right? So the National School Association did a big research piece about the scope of work of a school counselor. And what they found is that in our new training and in the needs of our students as it developed over the course of the last several decades, the scope of work changed, right? So the guidance counselor was sort of reactive to what happened. He only worked with some students, maybe those ones going to college or those ones who were interested in a vocation. He was there to support school improvement, but wasn't really like central to that work. His work was in isolation and sort of linear. The scope of the school counselor, the modern school counselor, based on our training and our national organization, our ethical codes, is that we're data-driven. So when we are creating interventions or school-wide prevention things, we're utilizing our student data, right? So at Carson High School, we're looking at who are ACT students that are struggling? How can we better support them? That's that data-driven piece. We provide services obviously to all students, right? So how are we supporting our English language learners, our first generation students, our special needs students? We're essential in our school improvement plans in all the schools that school counselors exist in. We're school leaders. And I think it's really important to highlight that part of our scope of work under our national organization is that we collaborate and consult with our different admin, teachers, parents, and families. So I'm going to talk about that kind of repetitively, I feel like, but collaboration and consultation is a really important part of school counseling. So there's a reference there too, so that if you're like me and you would like to know why that matters, there you go. So school counselors' work kind of is divided into 3 areas or 3 arenas. We look at a student's academics, their social emotional development, and their college and career pathways. So when we talk about academics, I kind of highlighted some of the key areas, right? So gone are the days where all we do is scheduling all day, although that definitely feels like what we're doing right now. But it isn't the scope of our work. So we are class placement experts, and we are certainly helping to ensure that a student is taking the classes that he or she needs to get to whatever it is their goal might be. But we're also working with teachers to come up with interventions for behavioral things or for attendance things, or if we want to scaffold some of these students to get into these classes. We do a lot of the transcript monitoring, making sure students are going to be able to graduate Carson High School, right? So those students that are those non-grads, like we are working collaboratively right now with our deans to make sure we catch all these kids so that no one goes missing during COVID. The last are, so I work at a school where my principal's main goal is to make sure that we have equity and access to our honors and AP students right now. And so as a school counselor, what we're helping to do is identify these students early on, like who are our Latino students that we can better support so we can get them into these honors and AP classes later on. So that's a big part of our academic goal. Socially and emotionally, across the middles and high schools, we support and sort of triage mental health things that come up. So this is a really good example of how we collaborate with our social workers when we know that a student's mental health needs need to be moved on to a higher tier, then we can work with our school social workers to make sure they're getting the proper support. So we kind of think about it in 3 ways. Whole school campaigns, these are preventive or ways to address all the whole student body. We do classroom lessons, right? So we're all trained to give guidance or curricular lessons within classrooms. Most of us have been teachers. School counselors are typically, but not always, school teachers. So we have, through our national body, classroom lessons that we can give, and we have guiding common standards, just like content standard teachers. And then obviously individual supports as students come to our offices upset or in need of anything. Obviously, we're seeing an increased need for trauma-informed care. So that's not just to our students, but also helping our teachers who are dealing with secondhand trauma. We are trained to train our staff. So through the scope of our work, we can give professional development to our school sites. We can talk to any of these sorts of matters when it comes to anxiety interventions, being reflective of cultural diversity and needs, like we've heard a lot tonight. To school counselors, that's very important, right? So training our staff on these kind of issues is really important. So a really good example is one of our deans, Shelby Tuttle, is really focused on finding restorative practices. So he and Alejandra and I consult and collaborate with him often to find ways that we can stop that school to prison pipeline, right? Help students find restorative practices to not repeat behavior, but still have some version of discipline. And then obviously making referrals to families. So then that final piece, career in college, I think is something that we're known for, school counselors nationwide. So unfortunately, we can't, in Carson City School District, do a lot of college and career info to K-5. Hopefully in the future, that will be a thing that we can get back into. Right now, we're planning to put out some lessons to our elementary school teachers that they can utilize, but the hope would be one day to restore elementary school counselors so that we can work collaboratively with our elementary school social workers. We support in applications. We create 4-year plans for students, which, is a state directive. We can host and organize college and career fairs. We have college visits all the time. And then one thing that's super important to us this year and always is advocating for a college-going culture in Carson City. So I want a student from Empire Elementary and kindergarten to know what college is, and I want his family to know that how they can afford that, by 5th grade. So that's sort of just an overview of our 3 areas. And I just want to, I got a couple quotes from people that feel strongly about school counseling within the district, just because I think it's important to hear from different voices. So Dr. Molden was at Eagle Valley. We're lucky now because she's at Carson High School. And I really appreciate that she talks a lot about the collaborative nature of school counseling and administration, because I don't think a day goes by that I don't spend time talking to my administrators. So I'm really grateful for that. And this quote, I think, really speaks to that idea that in Carson City, we have this really lovely village that we work together to help our students. So I included in my presentation some links in case you want to know more or if you want to advocate for why school counselors matter. So the top link is just our national body so that you can look over that. Our ethical standards are on there and things like that. The next is like a list of what responsibilities school counselors should be doing and which ones they should not be doing. The next is an overview of the role of school counselors, and then there's a page for each one. So why should there be high school counselors? Why should there be middle school? And why should there be elementary? They're all one-pagers, which is helpful. And the last is a really good article about how building relationships is directly tied to positive outcomes in academics, right? So why school counselors matter in an academic sort of way. Those soft skill things. Okay, so improving the equity of access to our school counselors during COVID-19. So we on Monday heard the schools were shutting down, and by the end of the day had a website, a Google site out to our school communities with resources to things like technology and stuff. So our families had that. This is a middle school student. He works with Lupe. and Lupe Schofield, and loves her. And so he's going to talk a little bit about how it's important to have a school counselor for his own sort of needs and stress.
I've always gone through a lot of stress and anxiety in my life, and I didn't always want to talk to my mom. So when I got to middle school, it was really nice knowing that there was someone that I could talk to, whether it was just emailing them or actually talking to them in person to try to help anxiety and stress that I was, like problems I was having. And it was even nice to just rant and like even if we weren't gonna find like the solution, it was nice to just like talk to someone about it. Thank you.
So he's a 6th grader at Eagle Valley. I just like the way that he talks again about this like safe space at school. So I talked briefly about equity and access, but Mr. Chambers, that's really a huge mission for him, right? Is how can we better identify our students and how can we scaffold them so that they feel successful in these higher level classes? So his quote, I'm going to read, it's probably the only one I'll read, but counselors are essential for building equitable educational opportunities to our students. To create equity, counselors take the time to build those relationships with students. These relationships allow the counselors to understand the students' needs and ultimately to advocate for educational pathways that lead to student success. So that is our goal, and especially within our schools here in Carson. I'm not going to like make you look at each of these links, but in the last little bit, this is representative of what Carson High School has done to ensure equity of access, meaning if you are a Jumpstart student, how do you have access to us? If you are working fully remotely, how do you have access? If you are only at school once in a while, but you need to talk to me and it's your off day, how do you have access? So every single service we're offering, we went really hard with like, how can a kid, no matter where they are, get to us, right? So we redid our counseling website and we utilized image icons on our front page so that even if you are a language learner, you could pretty quickly identify what it is that you needed to access. We also have a way that Spanish-speaking parents on our website can make an appointment with Leticia to make appointments with us. Our scholarships used to be in a paper handout that students would come and get from the counseling office. And now all of our scholarships are available on a digital platform so a kid can get every scholarship that they need. It's updated basically daily. And our calendar is interactive so a student can quickly see when something's due. And all the applications are there. So they all have access to it. On top of it as well, there's like a video that I made about how to write an essay so that all students as well have that equal access. I want everyone to have an equal platform or playing ground when they enter a scholarship. We helped spearhead the open house, which in the past, we average about 300 to 400 people at open house. And so far, our open house has had about 1,000 unique views. So that's, more than 3 times our family engagement, which is to me really helpful because now a parent can access this at any time. And again, Leticia did like a Spanish tour of it. And then within one of the doors, there's a whole page for our Latino families. Our CHS Chill Room is a way to help students regulate. So every single thing you touch in there is a 1 to 10 minute resource to help re-regulate. So there's art projects or meditations, the ways that students can quickly re-regulate themselves, and we've been utilizing it a lot, and so we've shared it with our middle schools. So Nikki Hundy put that together, and it's been a really great resource. And then finally, each of the high school counselors at Carson High School have a digital office. So those are our links, and this is how students can get quick resources. Obviously, it speaks to their pretty short attention spans right now, but it looks really fun, right? So you want to click in that as a young person. This is how they can make appointments with me. I mailed them out as postcards, and many of us did. So I asked Pioneer too for their links. They got it to me today. He also has a digital office at Pioneer. I'm going to let Mandy talk a little bit about the middle schools. There's obviously been a shift there, and so she's going to share kind of what they're seeing in the middle schools and what they've been working on.
Okay, so yes, we've definitely, well, I should say we've seen a shift, but I wasn't there last year, so I can't compare it to last year, but we definitely have a lot more online learners, digital learners, full remote. So we just listed at the top here our goal, because we all have to set a department goal for our evaluations, and it was to work to improve the academic achievement of our distance learners. So we really wanted to make sure that those kids who aren't at school were able to access us and able to access the resources in the school as well. So on our counseling website, I won't go to every one of these either, but actually I will go to this one. I lied. So on our counseling website over here in resources, that's where we have all of the resources for our digital learners. We use the Edgenuity program for online learning. So we've got this is a Zoom meeting to address the student or lack of student achievement in our online learners, full remote. We did offer some Zoom meetings or in person too for our kids who are really struggling. So this is one of the recorded Zoom meetings for students to access. And then we've got our virtual student kit, parent resources, because it can be a little confusing, suggested schedules. There's more on here. I don't know why it's not. Oh, there we go. Okay. And checklists for at-home learning days, distance learning days. I made a screencastify on how to use Infinite Campus to check grades and check in for attendance. And then there are some helpful, just different articles down here too. Good digital parenting while staying at home. How do I see the school counselor? Why should you reach out to the school counselor? So just different resources there. Oh, Bridget, help me. How do I get back? Thank you. And then in our newsletter, Whitney Tynes does that every month, and she has really timely kind of advice to parents in those newsletters, and she definitely combines it with a sense of humor, which is really important right now during this time where parents sometimes are very frustrated trying to keep their kids on track when a lot of them are home alone 3 days a week. So, and then just different developmental issues too that people are dealing with, like especially in middle school. I think the title of this one, if you click on that, is What Happened to My Child, or Why Won't My Child Talk to Me Anymore, something like that. And then she always gives links to resources too, different articles and books that parents can look at. Our appointments, of course, are available there as well. And then our open house. Bridget helped me to kind of create the same thing at Carson Middle School. So we had the virtual open house for our families, and the teachers went above and beyond, and every one of them has a video on their slide for their open house. So they really wanted to connect with the parents of their students, even though they couldn't do that in person. So, and then aside from that stuff at our school, I mean, we are really trying to help with interventions for our struggling students. We implemented, before the semester was over, we implemented the study halls because we have study halls we have in-school suspension for students with disciplinary infractions, but students aren't having any right now because there aren't as many at school. So those study halls were empty. And so we had our struggling students come in on their off days, and of course had to limit it, so had to schedule that. But it was really successful in terms of eliminating or helping them to achieve, so we didn't have as many failures at semester. So, and then we're also working on MAP scores. We're going into the classrooms to do mini lessons with them. To help them identify what their goals are and understand what their MAP scores are. So we're helping them academically that way. And then at Eagle Valley Middle School, they have their digital offices as well, both Sherry Mathis and Lupe Schofield. They are really reaching out to their parents with videos. They just pushed one out, I guess, on attendance, grades, credits. And typically in years past, those were things that they presented to the students, not necessarily to parents. So there is an advantage with that. They're pulling the parents into it more, which I think is really important right now because they're with their kids 3 days a week, or they're at least, monitoring their work. So it's really helpful for them to have that information as well. They did an intro to counselors video. They've got their chill room on there too. So basically they're trying to also make all of their services accessible to students when they're not at school too.
So this is a quote from a Carson High School senior. I just asked him, I said, would you just send me a quote, anything you want about a school counseling? So I just want to give you background about him. So he is a Carson City student, homegrown, right? So he went to Empire Elementary School, Eagle Valley, and he's a first generation, both American and high school graduate and college student. And he was Mandy's student also. She's a very gifted school counselor. He worked with Mandy through high school and made choices for his academics that were based on conversations with her. And so then he and I this year participated in a program called Quest Bridge, which is a program set up for the Christian Garcias of America, who have incredible GPAs and are representing first-generation families and are low income. And the idea is that it's only the highly selective colleges, and you have to do a humongous amount of work. And then if you become a finalist, then you have this opportunity for free tuition. It's really, really hard to get into. Christian became a finalist, which was incredible, and ultimately got from Dartmouth a full offer minus $3,000, which we will obviously cover with scholarship. Yeah, so Christian Garcia is, entered our school as English language learner, and here we are. So anyway, so Christian's side note about collaboration. So Christian's family is really scary to our Latino families to talk about sending your kid to Rhode Island. Not only just because of the college piece, but the money piece and the understanding what's going on and not really being able to access this information like Trustee Crossman and I can as parents, right? So I worked with Alejandra, our school social worker, and she and I sat down with the parents and we answered all their questions and we talked about what that finance looked like. And so that was such a good chance to collaborate and help this kid. And by the end, the parents felt like this is the right choice for my kid, right? He should be going there. So his quote about Mandy is, my school counselor went out of her way to always make sure that I took advantage of the opportunities with specific classes aimed towards my goals, and by making sure that I wasn't getting overwhelmed. So I really want to work towards more Christian Garcias by having one day elementary school counselors that can help talk about what is the university to a second grader, right? I want to know that a parent understands what this looks like, and I want to collaborate across this district to make sure that our students are representing us in these Ivy League schools. So the future of the Carson City School Counseling, this is the last thing you have to hear from me, I promise. We have 3 major goals right now. The first is obviously to continue advocating for the return of elementary school counselors. The second is to create and support a diverse college-going culture for Carson City School District. So what that means is that when you walk into an AP class at Carson High School, it represents what our student body represents. It also means that our staff and our, I would love our EDU 110, our teacher class, to be representative of what our student body is. And Alejandra and I talked about this a lot. So nationally, students or teachers are approximately 82% white, and the rest are teachers of color. And so Nevada and California, Texas are actually the worst in the representation. So it would be ideal, right, if we could grow some more of our Latina or Latino students to become teachers. And then the third is to expand and develop our professional development opportunities to be specific to school counseling. So, in the past, we've kind of jumped on with teacher training, but we need better school counseling training so that we can support equity, and how do we get that in our schools? So that's so much listening. Thank you. Do any of you have questions that Mandy or I could answer?
Anybody want to start it off? Mike?
I'll just say thanks. I mean, it's amazing work you're all doing, and I like that Jackson doesn't feel comfortable talking to his mom, who's a counselor. But seriously, these resources, having them available, because if a child's at home, they don't, they don't have access to these things, and so those Bitly rooms and all those other links that speak their language. It's a safe place. It's a way for them to get resources, and I think that you've made it very accessible, and that's important. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
Like Lupe's.
So I echo Trustee Walker. Thank you for what you guys are doing, and thank you for including the parents to be part of this team, because that's what it takes. The student is not going to make the decision by himself or herself. We need the parent involved in the decision making, and you just, informed us of what you guys are doing, and so I appreciate what you guys are doing for all students, but in particularly underserved student populations.
We do have, I too appreciate what everybody's doing. I think big advocate for counselors. It was a shame when we had to lose some of the counselors, and I'd love to see them at all levels. Looks like I really like what you're doing with the kids, getting them college and career ready, and seems like there's a focus on the college piece, which I'm an advocate for. But we do have some students that's not their path. And when I think about social and emotional well-being, that's probably a piece that we need to address too, that a kid knows that, hey, I might not be going to college, but I do have career aspirations, and this is what I want to do. And are we, as counselors, are we able to address the needs of those students as well?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I actually am at the high school. I'm our CTE representative, and last year Amy Fry's Middle paid to have me trained as a career counselor. So it's like a national certification. And I agree with you. This is something we need to continue growing. So when we say college and career ready, it does often sound like just college, like it's you and I or bust. But I agree, we need to be working on improving our trade school participation. We need to be talking about that. And so we're really lucky to have things like our career center that we collaborate to make sure we have resumes built. We have a virtual career fair that's coming right now that we're all participating in, helping set up with Mark. And so certainly that's part of that college going culture. So again, back to that first grader, rate, I would love for him to tell me what college is. And I would also love him to say, I would like to be whatever, a plumber. And then we can talk about what is that journeyman program? What is that apprenticeship program? Because I really agree. I think that's an important part. And that's certainly under the scope of our standards as school counselors. Yeah.
No, I appreciate that. I know in my profession as an engineer, we'd go to schools and we'd start off going to the high schools all the time. And then we started realizing pretty quickly that by the time we went to the high school, a lot of those decisions were made.
Yeah.
The kids kind of had a path, some of them. And so then we started hitting them at the middle school level and trying to go to elementary level and just introduce a variety of professions to these kids. So I think it's for you to mention, what is it you like? What do you think you want to be when you grow up?
Right.
And let them know what those opportunities are and what the path in that direction is.
Right.
So again, I appreciate everything you and your colleagues are doing as well. Do we have any more questions or comments? Anything from the two of you?
I just wanted to say we are super lucky to have Bridget as our advocate for school counselors. I mean, she took this role on, was it your second year?
Yeah,
technically, as a school counselor. So she is just an outstanding advocate for school counselors, and she pulls us along with her just in her passion for that equity of access and the same opportunities for all students. We're really, really lucky to have her as our lead.
Thank you.
Oh, perfect. I agree. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
I
thank
appreciate
you,
the
guys.
presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on to item, where are we at? Item 9, discussion and possible action on amendment of CCSD bylaws 050 organization. This is a second reading, and this will be for possible action. We have Superintendent Stokes presenting.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. At our last school board meeting, we discussed a review of bylaw 050, specifically under the section 3B, which suggested that the number of available committees that trustees could be assigned to be reduced by 2. Item B4, the Board Policy Review Committee, and also number 9, the Wellness Committee. We had discussion at our last meeting which identified that part of the work being done at this level was part of the work of our community PLC. And there was also discussion around the fact that if there was specific policies that trustees would like to be reviewed, that at any time could be raised when at the end of our meetings we ask for future agenda items. So rather than actually having a standing committee where, and now I'm talking about the Board Policy Review Committee, we could still review board policy but not go through them systematically and address those as they became needful through either changes in law or policy or statute. So with that, I turn the time back over to you, Mr. President, to have further discussion. This is a second reading, and if you are inclined, action can be taken for this item.
Thank you, Superintendent Stokes. I'll open it up to the board. Trustee Walker?
I want to move that we, that the Carson City School District Board of Trustees approve the February 9, 2021 as a revised date for CCSD Bylaw 50 organization.
Okay, we have a motion by Trustee Walker.
I'll second it.
Second by Trustee Varner. Any board discussion? Seeing none, do we have any public comment?
Seeing no public comment online?
Thank you. Renee?
No public comment, Mr. Cassioppo?
All right, thank you. Bring it back to the board. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Richard. Okay, move on to item 10. Designation of Silva, Serene and Associates LLC as the independent audit firm for fiscal year 2021 in an amount not to exceed $63,000 as budgeted and as required by NRS 354.624. And this also is for possible action. AJ Fueling.
Thank you, President Cassioppo. Each year, the school district, the Board of Trustees is required to have a financial audit of all the business of the school district. This must be sent to the Department of Taxation once decided by the end of March. You have in your packets an engagement letter from Silva, Serene and Associates. They have been doing the audits for the school district since 2012. And they, Mr. Silva, again, this year, without asking him, has agreed to keep his fee the same as it has been the last 2 years. So I was pretty thankful for that. I wasn't expecting that. So, but the audit is a 150-page masterpiece each year, and looking forward to having another one. So for your consideration of approval.
Great, thank you, AJ. Let's bring it back to the board. Anybody want to either make a motion or have some discussion on this?
First of all, I'd like to thank Dave, because not only is it the same price, he dropped it 2 years ago too.
Right.
So to keep it at the same level is amazing, and we appreciate him being conscientious of our finances. So with that, I move that the Carson City School Board of Trustees approve the audit firm of Silva, Serene and Associates LLC as the auditors for fiscal year 2021 for a contract amount not to exceed $63,000.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? Laurel, you seconded it?
Second.
I heard you. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any board discussion? Seeing none, any public comment?
Seeing no public comment online, President Cassioppo?
Thank you.
No public comment, Mr. Cassioppo.
All righty. Before I call the motion, I just want to thank Dave Silva. I too agree. He's been very good to us, very professional, and I appreciate the service they're providing. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Moving on to item 11, approval of the consent agenda.
I'll move that the Carson City School District Board of Trustees approve the consent agenda as submitted.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second by Don. Any board discussion? Any public comment?
Seeing no public comment online?
No public comment, Mr. Cassioppo.
Thank you. Bring it back to the board. All those in favor? Aye. And any opposed? Seeing none? Motion passes. Item 12, informational items. You all have that in front of you, so it's for discussion only. Any questions on the informational items? Seeing none, let's move on to item 13, request for future agenda topics. Do we have any requests? Seeing none, Richard, I'd like to make one request, as we discussed earlier today. I'll get with you on some of the policies, but I thought this would be in light of some of what we heard, a good opportunity to just schedule a review of policy 543. And I had one or two others, but I don't have them handy right now, so I'll get with you. But at your convenience, I'd like to schedule those. And my purpose in doing that is just to make sure that we're current on our policies, and they read the way we think they should read, and they're current. Anyway, with that, I'll get with you on the ones I'm thinking of. Okay, item 14 is adjournment. If nobody is opposed, we are adjourned.